Hello.
Chatters.
Chit chatters. Welcome
Welcome to this one.
to this one. So as you would have heard on our full episode, we are going to work through this balancing wheel.
Yeah, and you guys get the proper
Exercise.
content,
Yeah.
right? So we had this idea for our episode today. It didn't work out to be good for a podcast episode because it was too much like just information and it just wasn't flowing very well. So we scrapped it. We went back, we did the episode that we did instead. But this was part of the plan for today's episode for you guys. So hopefully this works for you. And give us feedback on that because, again, we're trying to find this good balance of just chatting and bringing content to you guys that is something that you can practically do with your partner or you can do on your own in preparation for your partner. Please give us feedback. We would actually love that. I genuinely mean that.
Yeah.
I don't just say that to talk.
Yeah.
I really want feedback, so please give some.
Yeah. And if you want to see a visual of what we're working through today, have a look at the freebie download on our website,
We'll also put that on. Can we put it on Patreon? Can we?
Probably could just link
we'll
it
put it up there for you guys. Yeah, so download that.
Yeah, so have a look at that just to have a better understanding of what we're working on and for you guys to be able to work on it too in your relationships or even by yourself. So this is the balancing wheel of relationships. And the reason that you do an activity like this is to get an idea of how you're going across the board, because there are so many times where you know that you're struggling or there might be things going on, but it's just hard to unpick where you might be at as a couple. And starting to work on anything is really overwhelming. So the idea of this exercise is to identify where it's at and identify where you want to work on as a first step. And so it gives a broad kind of big picture view of where you're going, where you're currently at. And it's important that before you do this activity, you come in with the right motivation and the right perspective. It is about you focusing on your ownership of your experiences in your relationship. It's not about you focusing on what your partner could do better. So I'm just going to read a little spiel before we go, because I think it's helpful to get your brain coming from the right lens before you start. And you too, before we start. Before we dive into this activity, it is important to approach it with a mindset of self-reflection rather than focusing on your partner's actions or habits. This is your chance to take ownership of your own experiences and contributions to the relationship. As you answer the questions, think about how you can improve and what you can do differently rather than what your partner should change. This will help create a more constructive and positive discussion, leading to meaningful progress for you both.
Lovely.
Alrighty. And the other thing that's important to say is this is meant to be, as we said in our main episode, it's meant to be a really constructive conversation. It's meant to be an uplifting, empowering conversation that helps you recognize where you want to work on as a couple in a positive way, constructive way. If you find, make a rule, make a comment, like if this gets too much at any stage, we can pause, we can come back to it. And that stands for you and me as well. All right, now that we're in the right headspace, what you will have on your paper and what I've done very neatly on these papers is I've drawn a circle that is, you can't really see that in the video, but I've drawn a circle that's divided like a little pizza into 8 segments. And each of the segments have a category connected to them. So the first one is communication, and then it goes to trust. I can't read my hand.
I can't read your writing.
Intimacy, conflict, goals, time.
Okay, I'm just going to rewrite intimacy.
Support. Yeah, intimacy is the one that I couldn't read either. And appreciation. Anyway, so these are the segments. These are the areas of our relationship that we're going to just assess at the moment, take a pulse check on. With each of these categories, what I'm going to do is read out some thought-provoking questions, and it's about getting a feel for the overall score of the category. So we're not answering each question. We're just like, if you take into consideration all of these, what would you say your score out of 10 would be? And so on your circle, the center point here is 0. The external line is 10.
So 10's good.
10 is great. 10 out of 10. Great. Perfect. 0, not great. So when we go through each category, we're going to put a little line across the segment where we think it's currently sitting. So if it's like, oh, we're probably 5 out of 10, put it halfway across, and that's where your score is going to be.
Great.
So starting with communication, we are going to take into consideration these aspects before we put any score down. How comfortable do you feel expressing your needs and desires in the relationship? Are you actively listening when your partner shares their feelings or thoughts? Do you feel heard and understood by your partner? How often do you find yourself holding back important thoughts or emotions? Are you open to feedback even when it's difficult to hear? How do you think your partner feels about the way you communicate? And how often do you use language like we instead of me or you when discussing issues? Considering all of those the general vibe of all of those things, put a line across your segment where you think it is at.
So for communication, I actually put 6. And it was funny, like, because thinking through this, and this is funny because we've got a communication podcast and we think that one of our strengths is communication. What made me go 6, and it could be a 7, I'm not sure. But why I've landed on 6 is because I think that we do well in prioritizing communication and working through things, but the expectations that I have on myself lower my score. So I have a higher expectation, and something that I know that I struggle with is communicating to you the way that you receive it. This is something that I've openly shared with you about, is that I either go problem solving mode or I just tell you what, I kind of like, so for example, this is a small example, but you would say like, and we shared it on the podcast previously, you wanted to go for a walk. You wanted to start walking every morning. And in my head, I'm like, cool, just go for a walk. Just do it. And then I'd get frustrated. I'm like, this is how you do it. Set your alarm early. Like, why aren't you doing it? And so that's where that's where I'm a 6, is because I know that I still communicate in a way that is more the way that I process things rather than the way that you receive things.
Yeah. Interesting.
What's yours?
Mine's 8 out of 10.
Oh, rub it in.
But that's not for me. Like that's across the board. Yeah.
But and that's the thing, is like I still have the lens of myself and what I bring to the table. And I feel like, you do really well in the opposite way of speaking to me. I don't do, I believe I don't feel like I do well speaking to you, because I know of.
It's valid though. Like your score is valid regardless of the reality of it. And even then, how do you score that? But because how you feel about it is going to indicate where you should work on things. So that's interesting.
Yeah. And I'm very aware of that. I need to work on that. And I'm internally working on that, but I don't practically know fully how. Like I got rough ideas, like listen more, stop talking, be curious. But all the things that we talk about in the podcast, I'm actually practicing. I'm trying to get better at that.
There you go. Okay. So the second segment is trust. Taking into consideration these things, what do you rate it? How confident are you in your partner's ability to follow through on their word? Do you feel secure in your partner's commitment to the relationship? How much do you trust yourself to be honest and transparent with your partner? Are there any past experiences or fears affecting your ability to trust fully? How often do you find yourself needing reassurance about your partner's intentions? Do you think your partner feels they can trust you completely? And how would you react if your partner expressed doubt about your trustworthiness? I color in my segments just because I like the visual of that, but...
Yeah, I started doing the same because I saw you do that. I'm like, oh, I want to do that.
Yeah, I just think it is a clearer thing at a glance.
I did 9. I feel like we've got high trust. I feel like why I'm not a 10 is because I know you have trust stuff with me because of my addictions and stuff like that, my previous histories and whatever else too.
Trust has been something we've worked really hard at.
Yeah.
I would put a 10, weirdly enough, except that I know my insecurities every now and then will trigger something.
I know my struggles, which is why I wouldn't put it to a 10. Do you know what I mean? Because I'm not naive to the things that I bring to the table. I'm not naive in the way that I've betrayed your trust. So that's why I'm like, no, I wouldn't put it to a 10 because I know of the struggles that I have internally myself.
Yeah. Okay. Intimacy. Do you feel emotionally close to your partner, and how often? How satisfied are you with the physical intimacy in your relationship? Are you comfortable initiating both emotional and physical connection? Do you feel your partner is receptive to your needs for closeness and affection? Are there unspoken barriers that limit your sense of intimacy? How do you think the partner feels about the level of intimacy in your relationship? And how often do you share moments of vulnerability with your partner?
Yeah. So I've put this as an 8.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're quite good in this area, and not to go into too much detail because this is more of a personal thing, but I think our physical intimacy is more of a struggle, and it's good. It's not bad, but it's more of a struggle. And we've been speaking about why that's the case recently. Love that intimacy is not just the physical. You know what I mean? When we talk about intimacy, and that's why it's still at an 8. And if it was just physical, I would say we're at a 7 or a 6. Like, it's not low.
Yeah.
The reason why intimacy in general is not a 10 is because our physical would be the lacking area.
Yeah.
Everywhere else, I think, is very solid, and it's a good thing.
Yeah. I've got it as a 7 for the same reasons, I think. But I think even emotional intimacy, like I don't feel a lack there, but there's some elements where I'm like, I don't necessarily feel like a romancy kind of emotional intimacy as often as I could, which is like exactly like it's just not our vibe. It's just my side just as much as our side as a relationship.
Yeah,
it's not our vibe. We've got a really fun way of interacting.
But I hear what you're saying, which is, again, very valid. So it depends on what you mean by romance. Like, for me, like, romance is like, it's like, oh my Gucci goo, like a sort of thing, I'll buy you flowers and that sort of stuff is not our vibe as much, but doesn't necessarily mean it's less valid if that's an area of what desire.
Yeah, I think the cherishing kind of thing, like it's really hard because I feel like we very much cherish each other in terms of like the value and the best friend side of things, which we've talked about on here before, is so strong that it's mostly fine. But there's like sometimes the kind of more raw, like serious intimacy where you, like, I know I'm just talking about movies now, but like that's not realistic, but the kind of like really serious moment of engaging intimately, like emotionally, and just being in that is not necessarily how which I don't know what it would look like because we're just not those kinds of people anyway. But anyway, that's all. I'm not upset about that.
No.
Either. But
7 and 8 still
7 and 8 pretty good. Yeah. So conflict is the next one. Considering these things, what would you rate it? How do you typically feel during conflicts with your partner? Defensive, open, or withdrawn? Do you find it easy to stay calm and constructive during disagreements? Are you comfortable admitting when you're wrong or made a mistake? How often do conflicts escalate instead of resolve quickly? How do you think your partner feels about the way conflicts are handled? Are you willing to compromise even when it's difficult? And do you hold on to resentment, or are you able to forgive and move on?
I put a 7 because of, I think our strengths are we resolve, we move. Well, it's not move on, we move forward.
Yeah.
It's something that we continually grow with. I think that I feel safe when we have arguments, like all that sort of stuff. Like, I think there's a lot of strength in the way that we argue. Again, it's coming from my lens, so and my experiences. So when we talk, when you said then about how do I respond, I think I initially respond poorly.
Yeah,
and that's where I'm lower.
Yes,
it's like I'm not chill when we're having a disagreement. I'm not like I'm frustrated. I'm defensive. We have, and that's with you and I feel like we get into this like hard place. And then we have a break, and then we reflect, and that's our strength. So we, it's like we've got to have that hard place first to then be able to navigate through from there. But I just wish we could not get into the hard place as much.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I've got 8 out of 10, and I agree. Like, I think that would be the biggest thing is the initial reaction that I have is quite defensive or is quite like, I don't know what else to say, but my experience of conflict growing up is so intense compared to like, I'm just
in comparison.
Yeah. So I think in my head, I'm like, oh, but we've never yelled. Like we've never
no,
it's never been the kind of intense conflict that I've experienced. So it's so interesting. And that's one reason why you do this, because everyone's going to have different experiences of it and different expectations. All right. The next one is goals. Are you clear on your personal goals, and do you feel aligned with your partners? How supportive do you feel in pursuing your individual dreams and aspirations? Do you actively discuss future plans and dreams with your partner? Are there areas where your goals and your partner's goals conflict? How do you think your partner feels about the goals you set aside together? How committed are you to helping your partner achieve their personal ambitions? And are you both flexible in adjusting your goals to accommodate each other's needs?
So I put an 8. So I think we do quite well here, supporting each other, encouraging each other, championing each other, our goals and aspirations and our hobbies and whatever else, right? I think we do quite well there. Create the safe space for those to be happening. Where we would struggle would be more where it's different. Yes. So for example, and we've had these conversations recently, I come from a background where it's like you just work, you work, and you work hard and you work, and that's how you sort of get forward in life. It's just, you just bust your gut and to get there. But you're in sort of the space of doing things differently. And the hard thing is like, but it's different from my experience. So just getting on the same level in that space, you have these huge aspirations for the podcast. And in my head, I'm like, I just haven't seen how that could actually happen. I don't know what that could look like. So I've struggled to get on board. I have this internal wrestle of like, yeah, I want to champion you to do that, but we need to do these things, but they won't work. Not based off anything else other than that's not how you get through life, but I just don't know. It's an area, it's a realm that is unknown for me. So yeah. So I struggle to get on board with all things because of experience.
Yeah, I'm the same. I put 8 down for the exact same reasons. Yeah, I don't think we're totally there, like supportive, creative, open to it. But the defaults are different. Yeah. And even approaches to things, like even just we've talked about before, like you're so ordered and proactive and I'm so last minute and like we just do it all kind of thing.
I love the little noises you make.
Yeah, that's because sometimes
and it's like
one of the things of my courses was to identify what type of, it's called modality of learning. Yeah. So like auditory, visual, whatever. And I was like, I don't know what mine is. And then I went through it and it was auditory. And I was like, that's exactly it. Because things like whenever I want to explain that something gets along, it's like harmonized, and I have to be like, it harmonizes.
Really? Yeah.
It resonates.
Yeah.
Or I'll have a noise for a feeling, but I don't necessarily have a word. I was like, that makes sense. Anyway. All right. So next one is time. How satisfied are you with the amount of quality time you spend together? Do you feel that you're prioritizing your partner enough in your daily life? Are there activities you enjoy doing together, and how often do they happen? How do you balance your personal time with the time spent as a couple? How do you think your partner feels about the current balance of this time together and apart? Are you present and engaged when you spend time together, or are you distracted? And do you feel that your time together is meaningful and fulfilling?
I put a 7. We spend a lot of time together, working from home, doing the podcast. We do so much together, right? We spend a lot of time together. Our trap is that, and it's a lot of it's down to tiredness, with the kids, with having 4 kids and stuff, we can just slump and just don't have the quality time together. So I've actually put it between 6 and 7, maybe 6.5, where it's like, this is definitely an area. Same with, and again, I think it's because I'm so aware of it in my own space, is like when I finish at the end of the day, I just want to crash, and I crash hard. I crash every day, and I want to learn to have a quality crash. I don't know how to really say it, but yeah, it's just definitely an area. Like, and we've spoken about this, about, again, just putting away our phones. So on weekends, we put away our phone. We just don't have our phone with us. Yeah. And I did it recently, and when we went out on a hike and we did this sort of stuff, and it was like, man, I was so much more present because I didn't have my phone on me. So even though it's a 6.5, it's something that we're always working on, and that's good. Yeah. And so I think we're putting some things in place to actually help that.
I've got 7 too, and almost for exactly the same reasons. I think from my lens, I definitely have a lower battery personally, and so I will definitely opt for less active, less busy time together. And I think as fine as that is, because of that, that's who I am. I recognize that's not quality necessarily, and it's not across the board. So there's something that and the distraction from phone stuff like that's just so hectic. All right. So the next one is support. How supported do you feel in your personal challenges and pursuits? Do you offer your partner encouragement and understanding during difficult times? Are there areas where you feel unsupported or misunderstood? Do you feel comfortable asking for help or support from your partner? How do you think your partner feels about the level of support they receive from you? Are you attentive to your partner's needs for comfort and reassurance? Do you make an effort to be there for your partner even when it's inconvenient?
I've put 9. I think this is a strength of ours, is supporting each other. Why it's not a 10, again, is it's sometimes my support to you is trying to tell you what to do, and that's not actually supporting. It's just, it's I do it because I care and I want to help, but again, it's not supporting in the way that you need to support.
Yeah. And I think the same. I've got 8, not 9, because of our different communication techniques. There are times where either I don't feel fully understood in a situation, but not really, like not for long term, just initially, or I don't know how to help you when you're. I know how to, but I just don't default into how to support you in that because it's not my way of doing it.
Yeah.
So. All right. The last one is appreciation. How often do you express gratitude and appreciation for your partner's efforts? Do you feel valued and appreciated by your partner? Are there things you take for granted that your partner does? How frequently do you acknowledge the little things your partner does for you? How do you think your partner feels about the level of appreciation shown? Are you aware of the ways your partner likes to be appreciated? And do you make an effort to show love and appreciation in the ways that matter most to them?
I've put a 7 because I know I can do more.
Yeah.
That's simple. I think we do quite well. I believe that we appreciate each other so much. Like, I believe the appreciation is there. But I also see that I could improve so much in this space.
Yeah, I'm the same. I put 7 too. If there was a segment for how well you answer them in,
we nailed it.
And it's the same. Like your default needs in appreciation don't necessarily, I think just also the season of life we're in, I recognize that that's tough to do that, but it's not necessarily my default. So it'll be hard to identify sometimes.
Yep.
So now we've finished this circle. I want to make a comment. You've just heard us go through our thing and put the scores next to it. And the score really doesn't matter. The score matters, but the actual number doesn't really matter. So if you're listening to this, like, that's nothing like the numbers that I've got in any way. It's not about the number. I did this twice when I was in my course with 2 different people on 2 different days. And it was exactly the same activity. And the first person I did it with was a little bit, I ran hers for her and she had lower scores. And so I had lower scores. When I did it, I was like, oh yeah, I'm probably a 4 or 3 or whatever. And then the second time I did it, I again ran it for the person first and she was doing really high things, like up at the 8s and 9s. And I was like, you know what? I probably am an 8 and a 9. So the actual number doesn't matter. What we're looking at is it kind of above the 50%, below the 50%? How do you feel about it? And how is it balancing out across the board? So that's the most important part. If you've done it differently to us, please don't worry. But you can see so clearly this really messy little circle. Yeah. The activity that we've just done is to have a visual look at the different areas that you're navigating as a couple. And now it's like you can see how balanced or unbalanced it is.
Yep.
So when you're looking at a wheel, you want it to be balanced. If you want it to be a smooth ride, the more well-rounded it is, the more healthy it is. And you can probably tell from your results that it's not always well-rounded and it's very normal to have parts that are lower. To answer the next few questions, which you can run through on your own when you're looking at the worksheet, I think, because we don't need to dive too far into all of them. What you're going to do with this is you're going to identify as a couple one area that you want to start working on first. So either you can look at it and see what the lowest areas are for both of you and decide, yep, we're both really low. We're both lower on this one, so let's focus on that. Or you could see and be like, actually, we're really out of sync on this one. I'm really high, you're really low, or whatever it might be. We've got the biggest discrepancy here. Maybe that's an area we should work on because we're obviously not meeting up here. So for you, babe, what stands out to you if you had to pick one of these areas to start working on? Which one do you reckon you would pick?
Communication.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's still that. Because again, like we're talking a lot about communication, but I want to learn how to communicate the way that you receive. I think because it's caused the most amount of issues.
Yeah.
There's room for growth in all of the areas, but the one that's caused the most issues is the way that I communicate to you.
Yeah. Cool. So you can either pick just the same one and work across the board, or you could each pick one and you can work on that. As you work on this together, you both address the issue you're wanting to talk about. We can do communication. I think that would be good. If I was picking, I probably would pick intimacy. But then there's some...
I can help with that. If you know what I mean.
Yeah, we all know.
Like, we could, I could show you a video or something.
Jeez Louise, I'm glad this is the Patreon.
Yeah.
So the next few questions that you'll see on the worksheet are for you to now ask each other and ask yourself and reflect on with that area in mind. And for the next little while, when you're working on these things, that these are different parts of the worksheets that we'll get out to you, maybe just address this area instead of trying to fix everything or work on everything. Maybe it might be helpful to just focus on this area as you go.
For sure.
So there's a few really important questions that are hopefully really good, thought-provoking things to help you think about what you want, think about how you can get there. But 2 ones I'll highlight for us right now. One is, if you had a perfect score, and you don't need to answer this, but if you had a perfect score in this area, what would it look like? Similar to what we did the other week. What would it look like? What would it play out like? Who would be there? How would it sound? What would it feel like? That kind of thing. Like, do that visualization and borrow from that what it would feel like and what you want it to be, and then use that to kind of inform how you go about it. So then the next one I want to highlight is a real action point. This one of the reasons that this activity is so impactful is, what are 3 small actions that each of you can commit to doing this week to start improving this, and name them, get super clear and specific on them. So I think those 2 questions are like the ones I'd want to highlight. I think there are some really practical ways to go about this. We're going to run through, when you go through the questions, you're running through how you're currently spending time in this area. So for us, how are we currently communicating together? How would we like to be communicating together? What would a perfect score look like? Like I said, what actions or decisions or conversations do you both need to have or do in order to get closer to that score? Are there any specific challenges you're currently facing? Because some of these areas you'd have really specific challenges, like intimacy, for example. You've got 4 kids. That might be a challenge. So just identifying those things. How can you create space for the changes you want to see? Like, what's 5% ownership each of you can make on this topic? 5% that you can be like, yeah, actually, this is probably the 5% at least that I can own of this challenge. Can you make these changes together, or is there additional support that you need? And if there is additional support that you need, who should you bring in on your team to do this? And then what are the 3 small actions you can do this week to commit to working on it, and name them, get really specific. Then really importantly, how can you celebrate these wins? And celebrating is so important to reinforce that you can do this and that there is change. And especially in a relationship, seeing the progress you're making instead of being like, this is a huge, big thing, I have no idea. Being like, we did the 3 things this week. We're going to buy a bottle of wine and have a bottle of wine together, or we're going to go out for a date, or we're going to rent that movie we've been talking about we want to rent, or we're going to buy each other our favorite candy, whatever it might be. All of mine, you can tell exactly what I would do by what I just suggested. And the last one is, how can you both support each other in making these changes? And I've got, let your partner know what you need, because some people will come to this differently. And knowing how I can support you in this, you telling me, I actually probably really need you to not have a tone about it, or I really need patience with this. Like, if you see it, just a gentle word, and then I'll be, oh yeah. Whatever it is that you need that's going to set you up for the most success. And that's the end of the balancing wheel activity.
That's good. I love these.
It's long, it's deep.
But yeah, we're looking forward to that feedback. So go check out, download that file that we upload on Patreon or on our website. Go through the exercise and let us know how you went. That feedback will actually be very valuable for us as we're
100%.
trying to grow in this space and learn how to communicate in this space and everything else too. So,
and if you do it and you feel like snapping a selfie and tagging us in it, let people know that you're having a date night check-in. We would love that. Thanks so much, guys.
Good chat, guys. Thank you very much. Bye.